First, just to follow on from previous speaker on the issue of living with COVID, and I know that we have statements on that tomorrow, and I welcome that, Leader, further statements. But of course the figures from the last few days have been disheartening, I think, to say the least, and I think all of us are really hoping that we'll see a turnaround in the next 2 weeks while we're still at level 5. But it really does indicate even more clearly the need for a clear exit strategy and a clear message from government, in particular on the very difficult issue of people coming home for Christmas and how we manage that. Very welcome news of the vaccine, of course, but we do need to ensure that over the next few months we have a clear strategy in place. Could I also, Leader, just join with others who've called for a debate on domestic violence? And I understand we're due to have that debate next week, and I very much welcome that in light of the very alarming figures from Safe Ireland last week, which showed an average of almost 2,000 women and 411 children were in receipt of support from domestic violence services each month since March. And we already know from various reports, several reports, the extent to which risk of domestic violence has been heightened and exacerbated during the pandemic. And I do want to commend the Gardaí and NGOs who've been working on this over the months of where COVID restrictions have been in place to ensure that supports remain in place for women and children in particular who are enduring this level of violence. But it really is a very serious matter, and as we approach the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls next week, I think it is really timely that we would have that debate in this House. So I thank you and the Leader for organising that. And finally, could I call on you, Leader, to arrange a debate on conditions for asylum seekers pending the implementation of the Day report recommendations and pending the abolition of direct provision. And we know that, of course, that is promised in the programme for government and that there are steps being taken. But in the interim, we need to ensure that those who are currently living in direct provision, those who are currently seeking asylum in Ireland, that the conditions they're living in are not simply let slide while we await the overall reform. And I note that this week, the Irish Refugee Council called for the urgent implementation of vulnerability assessments for asylum seekers and to prioritise children coming into Ireland. And that's a real concern that this isn't happening. Ireland is legally obliged to conduct a vulnerability assessment within 30 days of arrival under the Reception Conditions Directive. And I think it must be a concern if we see that this isn't happening, or if we see that perhaps we've let our attention become less focused on the conditions for people, families and children in particular, who are currently in direct provision. I know organisations like NASC, as well as the Irish Refugee Council, have raised this issue. So I'd welcome a debate on that over coming weeks, Leader, if we can.